Honestly, I thought I had done my very last before and after transformation podcast. I mean, it's really hard to top people like, Josh LaJaunie, Tim Kaufman, Anthony Masiello, Heather Goodwin, and so many others. And then I saw Dan Carraciolo's pre-post photos on my Facebook feed in the Missing Chins Run Club, and my first reaction, honestly, was like, bullshit, this isn't even the same guy. It looked like an episode of the comedy TV show Nathan For You, where he gets the author of a fake fitness book to hire an overweight guy to be his before photo. But as I dove into Dan's feed and I saw the slow and steady progression from overweight and diabetic to fit, and not just fit, but happy, and not just happy, but like way younger looking and more vibrant and more, present, like alive, I became a believer. And so Dan and I jumped on a Zoom call to talk about his transformation from unhappy overweight diabetic to ebullient athlete. And yes, I don't think I've ever used the word ebullient before, maybe high school. And we spoke about his favorite exercise, rowing, and he gave me a bunch of tips that I'm going to use because, I could row on that machine in my living room for hours and I don't move an inch. It's very frustrating, honestly. We talked about food and the mindset that was required to completely shift his dietary pattern. We talked about mental health and his own struggles and how important it is to destigmatize mental health challenges so that we can address them, ourselves and within our communities. And we also talked about Dan's commitment to social justice, including supporting the Black Lives Matter movement and his practice of offering a safety lifeline to non-gender conforming youth, which is why Dan's Facebook name is Dan Carraciolo He. One note of warning, the audio is not the best for reasons best known by Zoom and perhaps sound engineers everywhere. Everything we say is audible, but you might have to turn down the heavy machinery nearby to really get the most out of the conversation. Apologies for that. At least I wasn't typing. So enjoy. I'd love to hear your feedback about Dan's amazing story. So without further ado, Dan Carraciolo, welcome to the Plant Yourself podcast.
Thank you. How are you?
I'm great. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Me too.
And so I got to say, like when I first saw, we're going to talk about a lot of things, but the thing that caught my eye was a before and after picture that you posted in the Missing Chins Run Club. And, I'm friends and business partners with Josh LaJaunie, who also has great before and after pictures.
Right.
But in his before picture, I recognize him. In your before picture, I looked at that. I showed it to several people. They all agreed it was not the same man.
Yeah.
I had to go into your Facebook account and look at pictures you posted over the year and a half or 2 years, or I guess since 2017, to actually verify that this wasn't a scam. Yeah. You also look kind of like your son.
Yeah.
Like the guy 3 years ago could be your father. So
yeah, I know. It's, what's the best part of that, Howie, though, I'm going to tell you, is the 4 people in my life every day recognize me fully, wholly, as me and consistently, and doesn't recognize me as I was, as, an omnivorous 350-ish pound, man, 37 years old with type 2 diabetes. We forgot all about that, actually. Person. I mean, granted, he was the person, I say a lot that he's the person that kind of, stuck up for me right now, first. But yeah, I often have to link my Instagram to posts like that from, just to be sure, like, hey, like, I'm not here to make money on anything on anyone or, try to do the wrong thing here. This is me. This is what happened. I love plants this way for now almost 3 years. And it's completely changed me physically, emotionally, in so many, awesome ways that I have to I feel obligated almost to create those sort of wow-ish kind of side-by-sides. I've made a couple in the past that are kind of, borderline, just really shocking. I've done one with like a silhouette of my stomach when it was out to here, and then with me inside it today, actually. It's a really cool image to see sort of. So it's just sort of like, I say this a lot, I've been on a journey for a long time, since I'm probably 7 or 8 years old, like searching for the lifestyle that I have today. So I've kind of like feel personally that I've manifested this out for a long time, and knew that I would be able to complete what I wanted to complete. That's what part of it. So, thank you, I appreciate it. It is me, for real. It is me, 100%.
Yeah. Do you have any like identity documents that are still like the old you, like driver's license or passport or stuff that you have to show people?
So I have my driver's license. Actually, I don't have it on me yet. My driver's license, I have a chin that's out to here. It's from 2016. In New York State, we have it 8 years, so I'll have it for another 4 or so. And nobody says anything, when it happens, like Costco. I just actually had it out. I'm the one that brings it up. I'm like, it is like I'm going to give it to you, but it is me. But like, I talk about it so much sometimes that I try not to like bring it up. It's consider it, because there are people too in my life who I haven't seen, because of the virus now in a couple of months. And if I was only seeing them once or twice or 3 or 4 times, maybe a year, they haven't really seen me in a year or so, maybe physically. And then they see something like, like me on Instagram or something, and they're like, I can't even, it doesn't even make sense. I know you, so this is it. So.
Yeah. So let's do a little bit of the before.
Sure.
So at the point at which you couldn't take it anymore, you decided to change. Like you mentioned, you were like 360 pounds, but what type, you had diabetes, like what else, like how would you describe that person who made that brave decision and took that first step?
I would describe him as someone who was really a reader, and just like open to just anyone who had some ideas. I tried a lot of different diets, if you will, and had structure, like with Weight Watchers and with some coaches and stuff like that, and it just didn't make sense to me, like as a human then. I don't know, like it just was more like Band-Aid kind of work. And so he was constantly looking for and searching and learning. I'd say I'm still an habitual learner today. So, kind of redefining it. I just enrolled in Cornell University's plant-based nutrition program. So,
gotcha. So when you think about that person, like what was he doing wrong? Was it he didn't know what to eat, or he was eating away emotions, or like?
Well, I mean, stress? I think like white breast chicken was like everything that I ever went to first. Without like grilled chicken was like a de facto diet, and so it was always involved in like the same kind of like mindset, like lean proteins, meat proteins, stay away from sugary drinks, keep your carbs low, like everything. So it wasn't, when I started to like, over the years, actually, and because of some of the like even Black Lives Matter stuff, where I'm starting to read about my biases, my own personal biases that I've learned, and I start to apply that to food. And I start to say to myself, Neil Bernard had something that I read and watched once, that diet is really passed down, not necessarily like the fact that families have heart disease or are habitually diabetic. And that really resonated with me in a bias moment, for where I was like, wait a minute, I've been taught all this stuff, I'm believing it 100% wholeheartedly. And yet I am not being a human in it and just researching it myself and defining it for me. So I think I got to that moment at the same time when my hands were numb and I couldn't type. I type a bunch of times. I work for a bank, so I'm on a computer a lot. So I was typing and my tips and my fingers went numb. And I was like, I have to type every day. I can't not type.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really like, I was like kind of like pushing through my fingers to like get some sort of feeling back. And a colleague of mine noticed it and was just like, are you okay? Like he took me aside. He was like, let's go outside and talk to me. And I was just like, Nick, like I'm type 2 diabetic. I'm not taking my medication. Like everything I'm doing wrong still. And, my hands are numb. Like, what do I do? So it was that sort of defining moment for me. And this was after the first time I was diagnosed with type 2. I started medication 6, maybe 8 weeks prior to this little event. And it was really just me, Google search. My mom had started kind of like this vegetarian vegan diet. It was new. It was end of 2016, 17. She had a group of people text me a video that was in like a support group of hers in Florida, and it was Neil Bernard's TEDx 19 minutes from 2014. And that night I had that time with the tips of my fingers. I watched that 19 minutes. That was a Friday night. That Sunday I stopped eating animal products, and here we are. So that was April of 2017.
So there's a lot to unpack in that sentence, and then I stopped eating animal products. Yeah. Right? I mean, there's people who go years with that intention and can't seem to give it up, or attracted to cheese, as Neil Barnard talks about all the time, or okay, well, I'll just do fish or chicken, or like what was your well, ahas are one thing,
right?
But what was, like, did you know at that moment that was the end? Because like sometimes I'll make a decision.
Teeth. It was his. So it really was. If we had to like narrow it down in his video, it was the comparison between a man or human being's teeth and a feline's teeth. And the idea that some teeth are there to rip flesh, and we have teeth to chomp plants and to chomp, vegetables, and we don't have. And then the whole idea, again, unpacking my bias, the whole idea that human beings were not. I never thought of it as this like agriculture kind of output of industry and the taxing environment it does on the earth versus like just choosing not to eat those things. Like it's just sort of like a pivot. It was just an easy pivot when it clicked, and I was just like, of course my teeth are supposed to chomp plant. I don't teeth to rip flesh like a wolf does, and that makes sense to me, when I look at it. And then I thought about when I started to then research it a little more, I was just amazed by how many edible plants there actually are, right? And then I was curious in finding them in my community, in the Asian communities that exist in Queens, New York. And I would travel, and it just became this sort of like knowledge, like a door was opened, and I was like, holy cow, like I've been looking for you guys forever. And, it's not vegan. I mean, it is, but it's not the political piece behind the word vegan.
Yeah. What it sounds like, because I work with a lot of people who struggle to change. And it sounds like what you're talking about really is a subtraction, right? Like when you take away a bias,
Right.
you seem like you have a mind that desperately wants to make sense of the world.
Yeah.
And so when it was fed information about chicken breast as, a good weight loss food, it kept running a faulty program because of faulty inputs.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's so powerful, I think, to be able to first of all, recognize that we have biases, right? And that the way we see the world is not the world, but it's our filter.
Right.
And so to be able to kind of, change I'm trying to make the lens motion,
Well,
to focus not on the world, but to actually look at the lens and to say, oh, like once you remove that lens, it seems like you the same you was now drawn towards a completely different dietary pattern.
that's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly how I look at it. And I feel sort of like what I was saying earlier before we started was, I can't do it for anyone unless I do it for myself first and understand it and unpack it for me and then get a little bit ahead of it for you or whoever, is interested in this environment and learning about it. Because I think what's happened in this year, has really solidified it for me, considering where the disease came from, the origin, an animal, and these sort of things just make me feel the more I do things personally for me and define myself, I can help others hopefully, define themselves too. And that includes my family, includes my friends and colleagues, includes new acquaintances, because no one can really project, inspiration without really stripping it down first and saying, like, this is worth it to me. If it's worth it to you, it's a path, but it's not going to be you because you're you. Like, it's very, like, I've had a lot of like mental health components that I've learned over the last 12 months, maybe 15 months too, that I started to map over to why I am doing this in food and with my diet and subsequently, on social media.
So let's talk about mental health. What's the connection? What have you discovered? What has your own journey been? What have you learned?
Well, you said in the beginning that I have one of those transformations where people don't recognize them. Well, or that you don't recognize myself, right? So could you imagine what it's like to be me and see myself consistently in the mirror today and say, wow, you really, really are the 1%. Like I remember what it was like to wear 46 pants and a 56 suit, and be 5'9", and ask for extensions on airplane, belts and so on. And that was me for a very long time. I said I was dieting as a kid. I tell a story sometimes. I was 8 years old and playing peewee football with some friends here, and I was like 140 pounds, and you needed to be 119 to play with the 8-year-old team. So I played with the 10-year-olds instead, and I became friends with all the 10-year-old team. And the first game, I went to go weigh in, and I'm up against the 10-year-old like limit now. And I don't want to play with the 11-year-olds. They're a lot bigger than me, and I don't even know them. And I'm just upset that I'm fat and can't play with my friends, right? Subsequently, my mom started taking me then to like a lot of church basement diet programs that were in the 80s around here. We had like, these programs like when Weight Watchers started, on Long Island, Weight Watchers started. So there was a lot of competition in the beginning too. So there was this group called Think Thin, which is I talk a little bit about a lot now, because thinking thin is exactly what I've been doing for 30 years. I've been manifesting it. I've been trying to find it. I've been failing consistently at it. And I've kind of come to the point where failure is not the opposite of success. It's just a part of it. You have to just continuously get it wrong.
So what did they teach in Think Thin and these other programs? Like what did you internalize that was useful and then that got in your way?
I have to tell you, the Facebook groups are the church basements of yesteryear. So I think that I think a camaraderie exists. That used to exist in those. We used to like to bake goods that were compliant with that, and then bring them and share them with friends, and that we knew every Tuesday night we would go and see, Shirley and Jimmy and whatever, and there was 12 of them or 15 people who got together weekly and struggled together, sort of. So I think that exists today in these Facebook groups at its core. I think a lot of people, for me, it's just amazing that there's just so many people who need help. Actually, and I thought I was alone for a long time, and just to find out that I'm not is awesome. Find somebody like Josh, and be like, holy cow, he did all that, and he's a runner, and he's an ultraman runner, and he's woke, and he is just an angel, a star. And I'm like, I feel that way sometimes too, So those are the things that I think I learned back then, was to have a community, be grateful in it.
I want to push that point a little bit, because I've seen Facebook groups and I've seen Facebook groups.
Yeah.
And I think, basically I see three types of active groups. The group where, like Missing Chins, where people are really sort of pushing each other, holding each other accountable. A lot of people get their feelings hurt and leave. Then there are groups where everything's okay. And no matter what, I had donuts. Hey, that's cool. Take care of yourself. Start again tomorrow.
Only 300 calories, right? Or something like that.
Right. You got this. Totally useless. And then there's sort of groups that are in the middle.
Well, the groups that are in the middle are usually the ones with all the people that are completely, there's a couple of them that are just 300, 400, 500,000 people are in these groups, and I use those groups to push a plant-based lifestyle. That's it. That's it. Just to say, hey, I don't need Facebook or Instagram to have a career or be an influencer. I am blessed in my white privilege that I have this career that I have. But I have this passion now that I knew about, sort of, that I've been manifesting for a long time, that I'm saying to myself, I can do this. I can figure it out for myself. And I can help a lot of other people at the same.
Right.
That's, so that's why I use it. But you're right. Sometimes, there are there are some that are trying to be, define themselves and so on. But Facebook consistently reminds me of boundaries, actually, and that, and how to define them and create them for yourself, actually. You don't have to be friends with everyone. It's hard not to be. Trust me, 2,500 of them on Facebook too. And I know Josh has talked about that a little bit later. But ultimately, I think the core of them, there are people there who are really just looking for some sort of inspiration, some sort of hope.
Yeah. Well, I joined for sort of market research purposes, one weight loss support group. And when you're talking about mental health, whenever I go on that group, I just feel sad.
Yeah.
Because of the assumptions behind the types of questions and posts people make. Right. So there's so much self-loathing. and learned helplessness. So there was a post 2 days ago, hey, I'm not drinking enough water, any tips? And okay, like from a certain place, there's a conversation we can have about, get a big container of water, put it by your desk, like little, but the idea of, I don't know, it's almost like outsource.
More water equals weight loss only.
Well, that's a thing maybe, or that it's just like that there are tips. Like that's the big thing in this group is like, okay, how can I hack this?
Yeah.
And the big culture there is, hey, I'm doing the best I can. This is really hard, and I'm just looking for a shortcut. And when I look at your story, not only did you start, you changed your diet on a dime, 180 degrees. I'm looking in your background now. You've got a whole bunch of, weight bands and exercise equipment. You're posting, like viciously tough workouts. I guess you're, cycle and row and all that stuff.
I do a lot of cardio, all different types of cardio, but yeah.
Like if someone were to look at your story, like if you were trying to sell the program, it would, it might not sell that well. Because you're like, look, I do a lot of work to get here.
Right. That's right. Yeah. I think if I have to talk about the mental health side of it too, and explain that like I struggle every morning at 6:30 when the alarm goes off. I tell myself 10 times to not go work out, and just take the day off. Like you've worked so hard. And that's the discipline, I think in this space that if you, I just want to get better. So, my willingness to get better is greater than my self-conscious telling me to take the day off. So, and that's been true in meal preps, in cooking for myself, in sort of shopping, trying things.
So was that true from day one of your transformation journey, or was this a skill or a muscle you had to build? How do you attend to your mental health? You've got the two wolves inside you. One says, take it easy. The other says, this is important.
Yeah.
Like I've had periods in my life where the one that I didn't want to win kept winning. Yeah. And I knew it was a depression.
Mm-hmm. I 100% left my mental health in 2017 and then found it about 6 months ago, actually in July. So it was stuck there. So I just pushed ahead and found a supermarket that had vegan prep food, and I slowly just ate all that stuff and figured it out and Googled recipes and just got bad at it. But I had to bring it back actually for, and say to myself, after I recognized, there's a phrase that I learned this year, early 2020, called mental ill health. Which breaks it down. Before mental health, we think of it more sometimes, and it's got a bias that you need to have trauma in order to have bad mental health, or you have to have an experience as a kid in order, or as a teenager in order to now need some sort of mental health component. But the truth is, I talk to myself more than anyone else. So if I feel bad in my head and I don't go to talk to anyone about it, or if I don't go talk to somebody about a doctor, but if I feel bad in my chest because I rode too hard, I'll go see my doctor around the corner, or something like that. But if I am a little loose today up here, I don't talk to anyone about it. So I think recognizing my own mental ill health, I'm a male, I'm more than just angry and happy, which is like, the only two feelings men are allowed to feel in society, it seems. So just bringing it back, really kind of like going back and saying, all right, you are still, you are this person today. You did all this. I had imposter syndrome for like the entire experience because I felt like I was doing it myself. I wasn't following anyone else. I just took information and went with it. I didn't follow a program. I didn't, call Neil Bernard and get his, what to eat. I didn't do all the stuff that Eat to Live, all those G bombs and stuff like that. I didn't follow anything. I just was like, I know what whole food is. Mm-hmm. I know how to cook it. I'm lucky. I'm blessed that I grew up in an Italian family that where we cooked with each other, and I was taught how to cook. So I was 37 years old and could follow a recipe from scratch. That is something that I definitely appreciate with my learned bias. But that was really it. I left my mental health alone, but now I recognize that I shouldn't have, actually. Mm-hmm. And I was mean a lot during the process.
Yeah. Can you describe for people like what were the mental health issues that were getting your way? Like what wasn't right?
Sure. So I would say, obviously recognizing myself, I'm still kind of working through that. That was probably the biggest thing.
So sort of like mirror body dysmorphia?
Totally.
Like just
100%. Yeah.
I was talking, I went to Leadville to run the marathon with a bunch of chins. And at dinner, they were talking about, stuff they guess that they don't talk about with anyone else. They were all like, walk past a store window and like, there's a moment where I don't know who that person is.
Yeah. I think too, like it was easy for my family to accept it. But I never thought of the impact my journey would have on them too. So if they're out in the street or out in the supermarket on their own, in their own space, people often come up to them and say stuff about me, unwarranted, unsolicited, which I obviously appreciate, and they obviously appreciate too, but it does wear on them too. And so like that stuff hurt me, too, that I have to sort of like, there's a balancing act there too. Everyone says it. Everyone talks about it. I can't not talk about it personally all day long, even at work. I was a heavy male at the same job that I'm in today. And I have the same 30 clients that I have today. So they see me on Zooms now. They see me in my, on LinkedIn. And so I'm always talking about it. That is, part of my own mental health with it. And I think too, like in the beginning, believe it or not, in 2017, we couldn't eat anywhere. I couldn't eat anywhere. I still struggle to eat because I eat vegan when I dine out, but I'm really restricted, because I really don't consume too much oil at all. And everything vegan is out in the street is mostly oil based or something.
Right. So I'm curious because we're talking about mental health, and for most of the people that I work with, eating is a way of punting mental health problems down the road. Mm-hmm. Right. And so you're talking about having a restrictive, your term, vegan diet, which means you're not getting a lot of the jolly juice. Right, sugar, salt, fat, crispy meat.
I don't eat any refined carbohydrates.
Mm-hmm. So when you made that transition, did you find that like the space that created like caused you to be like, face to face with sadness or anger or, other things, whatever it is that we can typically try to eat away?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there was hope in just the beautiful food that I did find. I mean, that it was stuff. I saw stuff that I was like, holy, like I love beautiful food. Like have always just loved beautiful presentations of food. My grandfather was like an artist, not in the food space, but he was an artist, and I have a lot of appreciation for art, and food always had that like presentation for me. So when I thought about, you know, let's say bad foods that were, but more like mentally good or helpful or something, or, you know, I just saw that there were eventually, you know, an opportunity where I can indulge in something that was not an animal product, but would satisfy, you know, a particular want or an indulgement. Now, I didn't, I don't, first, I don't know what it is, Howie. I'm still maybe looking for it, but it just was that switch. And I was just like, I don't need it. I got so sick. I don't want to feel those tips on my fingertips anymore, ever again. I was on medication at 37 years old on metformin on 1,000 milligrams, and I don't need to do that. There's no reason for me to be on metformin at 37 years old when I could just make better choices than what I put in my body. So that's really, you know, the journey that I was on. That I tried all that stuff. I tried the low fat, you know, Oreos bullshit. Sorry, I don't know if you, but you know, like all that stuff is just gimmick and not defining, you know, what is wrong with us and food.
Right, right. And I'm curious about the relationship of the cardio, particularly in mental health, because when I started coaching with Josh, people would say, "Hey, I had a bad food week," and I would be asking them, "What'd you eat? What were you, you know?" And Josh would say, "Are you doing your walking? Are you doing your running?" And invariably, when people stopped exercising, they became sort of listless and sad and unfocused and started eating badly again. So what's the relationship between your mental state and your physicality?
So I attest. I have a rower right behind me. I row on a Concept 2 rowing machine. They're like the industry standard. They're made in Vermont, and they've been around since the 70s. I learned. I was on a journey again. I had not really ever worked out before, but I played football in high school, and like, you know, I lifted a little bit in college, but I never was really taught anything. I started Orange Theory Fitness right after I went plant-based. And Orange Theory is like a group fitness organization. They have locations all over the world. And they got me really consistent in going. Just going.
Feeling right. And Orange Fitness is basically high intensity interval training.
High intensity interval training, running, rowing, and you know, no bar movements like with an Olympic bar, but you know, kettlebells or you know, like lighter weights and like dynamic movements in that. So Orange Theory, and then they were a different atmosphere from an exercise perspective, where I had to be somewhere at a certain time to take a class. It wasn't on my time. I had to be coached. So it was like a different experience for me ever before, where I had sort of like to follow something. Right. And this is what we're doing for this hour, and you're going to be intense in it, and we're going to give you different levels, and you're just going to follow us. And they were social. I say all the time, I'm the top of the millennial. I'm like the elder millennial, Howie. I'm 40. Right.
Okay.
So I was 15 when America Online came out. So I like that socialness. They have like a little socialness to it on social media. And people were in that community again, you know, excited for me. I was excited for them, and I would see them and interact with them and share. And they knew I was plant-based, so it was a nice atmosphere. I did a year of that, and I upgraded to where I learned about this machine, a local place, but a CrossFit influenced place. It's called Concept Fitness in Oceanside. Really, really great place. Great coaches. Really broke it down for me. And because of COVID, I bought this rower because I couldn't go to the gym. And it became a 45 to 75 minute daily mental solitude that I need to offset this brain of mine, that I need to offset my career and the intensity of it, you know, the all the excitement of social media.
Uh-huh.
I'm focused on this machine for an hour a day. I know my splits. I don't think about anything else.
So you don't listen? Do you listen to music or
I listen to
podcasts?
some music. I do. I make some playlists during the week, you know, and so on. And I'll make some, and I'll listen to some music. Sometimes I
Uh-huh.
row in silence. I just rode a marathon on Christmas Eve, which is I did it in 3 hours and 15 minutes, and I watched a couple of movies the first time. You know, so but it was just, and then I've loved it so much that because I post about it, people are interested in it and asking me for advice about it and so on. So I just felt like, you know what, I'm gonna get
Hmm.
better at it and try to,
Yeah. Hey,
you know, just refine my craft. So
can you coach me on rowing for a minute?
sure.
Because I got a water rower,
Okay.
which I love for two reasons. First of all, it
Mhm.
stacks up really nicely and it's just beautiful.
Yeah.
What I don't love about it is the interface. I don't think it has nearly the same sort of stats and connectivity as Concept 2.
That's what you pay for, this little thing right here. This is
Yeah.
a computer. Yeah. Mhm.
But I find like I can do 10 minutes and then I'm either really sore or bored. And like I have trouble getting, like what am I thinking about sort of metabolically heart rate if I want to go for half an hour or an hour?
So let me ask you one question. Do you feel it in your chest and your back, or do you feel it in your legs?
Hmm. uh,
If you
I
feel,
don't.
I'll ask you why I asked you that. If you feel it in your chest and your back, you're pulling too much.
Okay.
Rowing is a pushing workout. Okay.
Okay.
So it's 60% with your legs and what we call the drive. And it's the
Okay.
same no matter what machine you use it on. The four movements are what's called the catch, which is when you're all the way up front, like almost in a fetal position.
Uh-huh.
The drive is when you push off. The release is when you touch off your chest and you touch the bar off your chest. It's a really quick release, very quick, like almost like think of it as your chest is hot and you don't want to touch it.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And then when you come back, two things to remember: make sure your wrists or at least your knuckles are past your knees before you bend them. That's big. That'll help your back. Because if you think about it, if you're sitting and your knees are, if you bend your knees before your wrists, you're already starting this sort of like arching your back. So you want to make sure your wrists and your knuckles are over your knees before you bend them. That's a big tip. The last thing too, which I'm really starting to work on the most, is relaxing in the recovery. So the recovery is when you come all the way back with it before you get into the catch. And you can build really good endurance if you actually can control and relax your muscles for that half a second and fully relax them in that recovery and then spring them back on the drive.
Mm.
And tighten them up when you push off. It's hard. There are so many different pieces to it that are so important. I'm learning a lot about my spine and being like tight with my spine and my core. And when I come back, I was always, cornered a lot. It's taught me a lot about so that's subsequently helped me with squats. Actually, because my core is straight, my belly button's tight. I know I can feel my spine straight.
Mm.
So, I don't know if these things are because I went plant-based or anything like that. I just know that I can recognize these things today because I don't have this weight on me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I found something that I'm passionate about and that I really enjoy.
That's great. That's great.
Does that help?
Yeah. Because I'm just curious, because it seems like people who row can get like a really intense workout pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And I find I don't. I think I must be doing something wrong where I'm fatiguing or straining certain muscles, and like my body is blowing a fuse before I hurt myself.
Videoing it helps, actually. And then there are a couple of YouTube series. One's called Dark Horse Rowing. that has a good like beginners, kind of standard videos on YouTube. They have a pretty big following. And he's put out some really nice videos on the basics.
Oh, cool.
And, if you review those, I would say the biggest thing is those 4 movements. Go really slow in them, and then make sure those wrists are past your knees when your knees are straight before you bend them. We could do another podcast on a rowing kind of side by side, but I love it, and it's not for everyone, right? So it's okay to try it and fail, and then it turned me into a triathlete, actually. So I was running a lot, but more like 5K and a couple of 10Ks and a couple of 5 miles. And I really was like, I can't run that long. Like I have like this fear of running as like an overweight like football player, so still. So, but your boy in New Orleans is a little inspiration on that. I found that once I get past the 2.5 mile mark, I feel really good and can go 10, 15 miles now, which is a really nice feeling. I'll stick around 10, 15, from a pacing standpoint. And I really can jog at all. I really don't run hard, like fast time trial miles or anything like that. But I just started to think in the fitness space, what seems impossible? Like if you saw that picture of me with my kids from 2000, that was first day of school, 2017. That picture on the left. If I say to myself, that guy can run an Ironman, that's insane. What I look like now is not even insane until when I complete them, that when I cross that Ironman and I do that side. So I've been like on this path of like what is almost impossible to me then, and then how can I work my way to get it to be possible?
Well, that's another really useful perspective is that, if you look at it as a single chunk, it's impossible. When you break it down into deliverables and timelines, it's practically inevitable. You mentioned before we started recording that you learned a lot from your business life that you applied. Let's finish the podcast by talking about that, because so many people, this is so common that people come to me and they're bewildered and confused and have terrible mindsets and terrible habits. And then I ask them, is that how you think in business? And they go, no, of course not.
No. I work for a global bank and have for about 10 years. And we plan all the time. We have planning events annually, quarterly, monthly, weekly. I don't have them daily, thankfully. But I created my own daily stuff, actually. We have a lot of time management, like resources, I guess, that I've kind of gone through. If you're a calendar person, and like on your phone, one of the greatest things I think of, if you ever know that Adam, I'm not sure, there's like a video out there where some guy puts big rocks into a jar, and then he puts smaller rocks into a jar, and then he puts smaller rocks, pebbles into a jar, and then he puts sand, and then he puts water. It's all about. So we look at that and say, put your big rocks in on your calendar. So what are the big things you have to do every single week? That you have to do, put them on your calendar, set the time now. And then when you come up to your Monday, be like, you're just going to spend your 2 hours on your meal prep because you've already determined that you're going to meal prep for 2 hours, whatever it is, on Monday. That's it. That's the day you do it. And then subsequently schedule in little pebbles of time, like this meeting, today, those kind of things. So that mindset, that time management resources, has really, that corporate America, I guess, kind of influences. But for me, funny enough, not a lot of people know this, I still am, like, I work in a middle market space at corporate America, but I help run a national food and beverage program. And in 2017, all private equity money was going into plant-based products, right? And I went to a bunch of different events where they had vendors,
like Expo East,
Expo West, Fancy Food. You've ever heard of Fancy Food? In New York City, Jacob Javits Center. There's one in Boston too. There's a big seafood special. So this was right as I'm starting the plant-based lifestyle, and I'm also soliciting business in the food and beverage vertical for our bank. And I just saw the growth in these companies and a little bit, and I was just like, wow. I was like, I didn't even know who they were, and they've already gotten $15 million from some angel investor or something like that, and they exist in Asheville, North Carolina, and they have 14 people that work for them, and nobody knows them. But they're here right now trying to promote themselves as plant-based, and I am plant-based. I didn't tell many people even that. I just kind of observed it. And I was like, I think I'm on the right path here then, actually. I was like, that's sort of, and so between the time management stuff and just the fact that I'm in the space and I work with corporates, that are in the food and beverage vertical, it was just a sort of a little bit of a reckoning or so on, that for me, where I was able to kind of like, holy cow, always meant to be here, actually. So that's my story, man. So I hope it's good, and people can understand that, like, it's okay. I'm one of those herbivores because I think there's a lot of definition in what we are today. But I'm one of those herbivores that just want people to find themselves in this plant-based lifestyle. And if you just want to eliminate eggs, that's fine with me. Like, I'm not going to be upset at anyone. I don't understand why there's so much angst in the vegan community, as it relates to compassion for animals versus compassion over individual choice. So that's really it for me. And hopefully, in the next couple of years, we can all grow to more than, 4% I read in the U.S. now, actually, or something just recently. 5% of us are identify as vegan, I guess. So, so that's it, man. I appreciate the opportunity, and I just want to say thanks. And anyone that's listening, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, great. You got time for two more quick questions?
Of course, yeah.
Okay. So one is, I noticed when I looked you up on Facebook, I thought your last name was your middle name, and that you had like I wasn't sure if it was like, Hmong or Vietnamese, like you had a H-E. I thought that was your last name, but then I discovered it's sort of he, him. And you talk about why you include your pronouns in your social media. Can you? Sure.
So absolutely. There's three reasons. And one is I'm male, and I know I have a 14-year-old who has friends who identify as LGBTQ, and her clique is important to me, and I love them. And if I also volunteer with a foundation called the Ryan Bartel Foundation through work virtually, which is it's an organization that helps at-risk teens and like put them in like big brother, big sister scenarios with corporate America.
Okay.
And they helped us understand that 1 in 4 LGBTQ youth do not identify with the birth gender that they were, given. So it's important to me to identify my pronoun and normalize it for our, generation. and generations older than me, because those youth, what Ryan Bartel Foundation told us is those youth that are at risk, that do not identify with their their given sex identity, they are like 80 times more likely to commit suicide. And chances are, if they see an adult who self-identifies their pronoun, there could be they could identify me as somebody who's open and who's willing to, to talk or be an outlet for someone who could make a bad decision in their own life. So it's really just for me a way to help normalize pronouns for our generation, and to also any one of my kids' friends have an issue and need somebody to talk to, like they got a friend in me, and if I've been lucky enough to hear that from my daughter's friends, and grateful that, they recognize that, I'm going to do the right thing if they come to me with something, but they can come to me and I'll help them,
Yeah, that's beautiful. And, I'm thinking back to my high school and junior high time. Like, I didn't know a single person, like no one would have said that they were gay or anything.
Right.
It was so, and then, following them and keeping up on Facebook, I'm like, oh, so-and-so is gay. Oh, of course he was. Like, why did he take all the girlfriends then? Like,
right. One of the things too is one of my closest friends from college, I met as a female, and he transitioned about 5 years after I graduated, like 2017. And he's been my best male friend for the last 14 years. And trust me when I tell you, if I introduced you to him as brand new, there's no way you would have known. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it's he's been able, his story is his story, and he's been living a beautiful life. And it's just a and well, trust me, I get a lot of shit for it. Actually, there are a lot of people who don't understand it, and I think again comes back to unpacking those biases. And thinking about exactly why you're upset about that, and not taking things into consideration. I'm 40. I had no support in anything like that as a kid, or even thinking of that like in schools. I'm in the same boat where I didn't know anyone that was gay until college. In 1999 or 98 when I started college, is when I first met my first I was like, I'm friends with a gay person. Like, oh my gosh, it's like it was a big deal. But the kids today have a really strong network in the schools. It's a couple of things, obviously it's a couple of different things. And, hopefully it helps people. And I've gotten a lot of people to say, hey, thank you, actually, especially on Facebook, because I'm like probably the only one that figured out a way to just throw it into my name, too. And it upset some people, some friends of mine, or acquaintances that I've had. But I'm me, so you could, what that means. So that's it.
All right.
You have a second question?
Yeah. I like to ask my guests what they're listening to musically that other people that they like that other people might not know about.
I am hooked on Glass Animals right now.
Glass Animals. Okay. Mm-hmm. Is there a particular song I should put in the show notes?
Well, you should just listen to the Dreamland album. Yeah, it's the newer album. Actually, their first album is called, interestingly enough, How to Be a Human Being, that I listened to, and that's an excellent album too. But I listened to, that's a new band that my daughter turned me on to. They're from the UK. They're excellent. Very uh, like eclectic alternative with like a hip hopness to it, but not rap to it, but more, but a band. Very cool stuff. And then I'm a Wu-Tang fan. You know, I listen to a lot of '90s alternative music. You know, and all sorts of the gamut. From Led Zeppelin all the way to even Nat King Cole and jazz. I was a drummer in high school and played a lot of jazz band. So I got into some of that stuff. A lot of older Rolling Stones and blues too. So I mean, but when I work out, I'm generally in that like '90s grunge sort of, or like Wu-Tang Clan mode. Like it's just, I don't know, it's just one of those things. So yeah.
All right, great. Well, I've never heard of Glass Animal, so I got something to listen to. I'll link to that.
Let me know what you think.
I will. And I'm sorry that Martin Shkreli outbid you for the Wu-Tang Clan album.
Oh yeah, absolutely, no problem. He probably paid. You probably should have bought some Bitcoin at that time, actually.
Yeah.
The Clan album, yeah.
All right. Well, Dan, it's been such a pleasure getting to know you a little bit, hearing your story and the energy that you bring to it, and the just the generosity of your sharing.
Oh man, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. It means a lot.
All right. I hope you liked that one. If you did, you can check out the show notes and see links to stuff we talked about, including some of the music that Dan was talking about. And that's at plantyourself.com/450. So in movement news, I've been feeling pretty strong at Saturday Morning Ultimate Frisbee, and I attribute it to all the yoga I'm doing through Monkey Bar Gym and also the weight training. I got a couple of 25-pound kettlebells that I'm starting to learn how to swing, use the hips, use the knees. And I'm hoping that within a month or two, they'll be too light and I'll have to go back online. It's really hard to find kettlebells these days. Apparently, lots of people are supplementing their home gyms or creating home gyms now that they don't feel safe going out to public facilities, so they're hard to come by. They are kind of cool. And yesterday, doing a really hard workout, I could feel the sweat, and so I'm very grateful that I didn't end up hurling any of them out the window. So I might have to get some gloves for that. And I'm off to play some tennis this afternoon after I drop this podcast episode and do some writing on the book that I'm working on with lead author, we're co-authors, but he's really the lead author, Peter Bregman, about how to help people change. I'm really excited to be getting that one out there. It'll be hopefully on shelves in September of 2021. And right now, the title of the book is Yes, You Can Change Other People, which is both a bold promise and also sounds kind of arrogant. So I want to assure you that it's not manipulative, but it is sort of the best practices of compassionate and effective coaching applied to all sorts of life circumstances and situations. I'll let you know when you can go on Amazon and pre-order it, which helps us a hell of a lot. In garden news, got into the garden this week and did a bunch of clearing of sort of dead brush. Hopefully everything that I pulled out is in fact dead and not some sort of perennial that Mia is going to miss next year. It was mostly like straw and corn husks and bean stalks and pole beans and runner beans that are sort of just basically kindling now. So those all went into the compost heap, and the beds are clear, and going to start laying out wood chips on the paths between the beds and getting ready for spring. The daffodils are already up a little bit.